والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. حكم قطع الصيام. قال المصنف رحمه الله: ومن دخل في فرض موسع حرم قطعه بلا عذر أو نفل غير حج وعمرة كره بلا عذر. This is dealing with breaking the fast. So the person, as he says, rahimahullah, man dakhala fi fardin muwassa'in. A person starts a fast, or something that's obligatory, and it's muwassa', meaning that they have time to complete the worship. They have time to complete the worship, right? For example, Salatul Dhuhr, right? Salatul Dhuhr is obligatory. And the time is not, there's time to make it. You got between Dhuhr and between Akhsar. So you might have sometimes, like now, 3 hours. So somebody comes and they miss the Jama'ah, right? They miss the Jama'ah. So if the Jama'ah prays Dhuhr at 1:30, they can pray at 2 o'clock. They can pray at 2:30. They can pray at 3 o'clock. They can pray at 3:30, right? It's time. You with me? Well, what's that? It's time to make it. But if a person misses a day of fasting during Ramadan, if a person misses the 10th day of fasting, do they have time to make up the 10th day in Ramadan? There's no time in Ramadan. It's not muwassa, it's mulayy. The time is constricted, it's tight. All right? Here we're talking about when it is time to make it up. Now, say they got to make up a day after Ramadan. As he says, mithul qada Ramadan. After Ramadan, a person got 3 days to make up. So when do they have to make them up by? Before the next Ramadan. So they got time, right? They got time. It's muwassa'. The time is open. They got time to make it up. Like a person starts fasting, they make the intention, they say, I'm going to fast. I got to make up 3 days. So tomorrow, they make the niyyah to fast tomorrow for Ramadan to make it one of their days, right? من دخل في فرض موسع حرم قطعه بلا عذر. Whoever starts, they start that day of fasting, and it's that obligatory fast for Ramadan. You with me? It's not permissible to break that fast now. You can't just say, you know what, I'm going to just break this and do it tomorrow. I'm a little hungry. Right? Not permissible to break that obligatory fast once they started fasting, except with a valid excuse. Except with a valid excuse. Clear? They started to make up their day during Ramadan. After Ramadan, they had time. They got from Ramadan to the next Ramadan. Or, you know, the time period there. Once they start fasting that day in Ramadan, they can't just break the fast and say, I'm gonna just start over tomorrow. I ain't gonna do it today. No, once they started, they gotta continue it. Except if they have a valid excuse to break it. Right? That's the first one. The second one, or nafl, a voluntary. If it's voluntary, as long as it's not Hajj or Umrah, if it's a voluntary fast and they break it, it's disliked. Right? It's a voluntary fast. They woke up around Dhuhr and they said, you know what? They haven't eaten anything, drank anything, so I'm going to just fast today. It's Monday or it's Thursday, so I'm going to fast today. I get the reward for fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. Later. They start fasting, right? Then around 4 o'clock, they say, you know what? It's rougher than I thought. I gotta eat something. I'm starting to feel lightheaded. And they break the sunnah fast, the voluntary fast. It's disliked to do that, right? Disliked. Kodi. But if it's a voluntary Hajj and Umrah, then they can't just break it. If it's a voluntary Hajj or a voluntary Umrah, right? They're going to make Hajj and Umrah and then they stop. Well, we might say, who's going to do that? But it might be people that live there, for example. People that live there. They might say, you know, if they get in ihram, put all the clothes on, then they get down towards the Kaaba, and it's crowded. So they turn around and say, you know what, I ain't gonna make it. I'm gonna wait till the weekend. We might not do that because we travel. But a person may be there and they might want to make another Umrah, for example. Sometimes people make Hajj or Umrah and they want to make more than one Umrah. Like if they get down, they get closer to Kaaba, the Haram, and they say, you know what, it's too crowded. I'm gonna just wait till the weekend. And they done already put on ihram. Once they put on ihram, that they can't break that. They can't break it, even though it's voluntary. Once they ihram, that it's obligatory at that point.
Now, with the first example you gave, you was like, they start getting lightheaded. Wouldn't that be considered an excuse, though? If they start getting lightheaded and don't.
For which one?
For the sunnah.
For the sunnah?
Right.
The
It's
sunnah voluntary
not
fast.
Hajj or Umrah, but a regular voluntary fast. You said
Right.
you start getting lightheaded.
Right. It depends on how bad. I mean, a lot of times when you fast, you get lightheaded. Right? It depends. If they feel like they need to break the fast and it's a voluntary fast and they break it, it's disliked to break it, the voluntary fast. It will still be disliked to break it. But if it's Hajj and Umrah, then it's not just disliked, it's moved up, because once a person gets in ihram, then it becomes obligatory to complete it. As Allah said, وَأَتَمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْأُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 196, and complete the Hajj and the Umrah lillah, for Allah. ولقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم فمن فرض فيهن الحج وفرض يعني أحرمات. So when somebody puts the ihram on, they get in ihram, they make their knee, they put the clothes on, now they got to complete it, even if it's a voluntary Hajj or a voluntary Umrah. We might look at it and say, who would do that? But sometimes people go to Hajj, they might be there for 3 or 4 weeks. So they might finish their Hajj and Umrah, they just sitting around, right? Then they say, you know what? I'm going to make Umrah for such and such that died, rahimahullah. Or they might make Umrah for their mother or somebody like that. So they go and they get an ihram. They go to the miqat, they get an ihram, right? They get in the taxi, they go down to the haram. Once they get down there, they see it's crowded. They done already put on the ihram and made their intention. They get down there, this is not obligatory. وَالْإِعْتِكَافِ سُنَّةٌ وَلَا يَصِحُّ مِمَّنْ تَلْزَمُهُ الْجَمَاعَةُ إِلَّا فِي مَسْجِدٍ تُقَامُ فِيهِ إِنْ أَتَى عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَشُرِطَ لَهُ طَهَارَةٌ مِمَّا يُوجِبُ غُسْلًا إِلَى آخِرِهِ. طيب, the chapter of Al-I'tikaf, staying in the masjid, which is usually done the last 10 nights. Al-I'tikaf is usually done the last 10 nights, even though it's not restricted to the last 10 nights. In Ramadan, usually done on the last 10 nights. So he says, firstly, the ruling on I'tikaf is what? Sunnah. Sunnah. It's not obligatory, but it's a voluntary act of worship. Sunnah. طيب. It says, ذكر الاعتكاف بعد الصيام. Staying in the masjid, i'tikaf is mentioned after fasting, لأنه يستحب أن يكون معتكف صائما, because it's recommended that the person that's staying in the masjid, making i'tikaf, it's recommended that they are fasting too. It's even better if they stand in the masjid and they're fasting at the same time. لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يعتكف في رمضان. He used to make i'tikaf in Ramadan. So he's fasting and staying in the masjid for those last 10 nights. So this is a serious form of worship, and it can be done at any time. تفعل في أي وقت. لكن في رمضان أفضل. You can make i'tikaf any day, but it's even better than making it during Ramadan. It's better than making it during Ramadan, following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So now it brings the meaning of i'tikaf in the Arabic language, al-makthu fil makan, to stay in one spot. Al-i'tikaf in the Arabic language means to stay in one place, to stay in one spot. طيب. But when we say we're making i'tikaf, shar'an, Islamically, لزوم المسجد, لزوم masjid li ta'atillah. That's one definition. It's to stay to the masjid, stay in the masjid as a form of worship, and to perform different acts of worship. Stay in the masjid, meaning not leaving, not exiting the masjid, as a form of worship. He says, فهو لزوم مسجد تقام فيه صلاة الجماعة من أجل التقرب إلى الله عز وجل والتفرغ للعبادة وهو سنة مؤكدة. ويجوز في أي مسجد من المساجد التي تقام فيها صلاة الجماعة. طيب, لقوله تعالى ولا تباشروهن وأنتم عاكفون في المساجد, in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 187. That it means to stay in the masjid where the 5 prayers are established. To stay in the masjid where the 5 prayers are established in order to worship Allah, in order for a person to get closer to Allah. And this is the point of i'tikaf. I'tikaf is not for hanging out. I'tikaf is to get closer to Allah, to be in the remembrance of Allah. وَالتَّفَرِّغْ لِلْعِبَادَةِ, and for a person to be able to busy themselves only with worship of Allah Jalla wa'ala. So they don't have the stress, or they don't have to worry of anything that they would have to worry about on a normal day, through their normal day, as far as maybe work or dealing with anything that comes up, where they can seclude themselves and they can be in the masjid. And it's supposed to be for worship, so they're supposed to increase in salat, salawat, the voluntary salawat before and after the prayers, reading the Quran, recitation of the Quran, making dhikr. All those things are supposed to be going on in al-i'tikaf, which means that, you know, we got to be mindful. A person has to be mindful of the reason that they're making i'tikaf. That it's not just to stay in the masjid because it's fun, right? But it's supposed to be that a person is busy with worship. Tayyib. So he mentions some specific things about the masjid that they stay in. That the masjid tuqamu fihi in ata alayhi salat. That the prayers, that the 5 prayers are established in the salat. Tayyib, that's number 1. So if the 5 prayers aren't established there, then they don't make i'tikaf in that masjid. It says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ أَنْ يَعْتَقِفَ فِي مَسْجِدٍ مَهْجُورٍ قَدْ رَحَلَ وَلَا تُقَامُ فِيهِ الصَّلَاةُ الْجَمَاعَةِ. Then you don't make i'tikaf in a masjid where the people don't pray the 5 salawat there. Why? Because that leads to a person leaving off an obligation for a sunnah. They're leaving off intentionally. You know that they don't pray the 5 prayers in that masjid. So you stay there intentionally, knowing that they don't pray the 5 prayers for the man. That means you leave off the obligation of the praying jama'ah, right, intentionally, in order to practice a sunnah. So you leave off a higher obligation for something that is lower on the scale of obligations, right? A person leaves off something that is obligatory for something that is sunnah if they do that. طيب ولا في مكان غير المسجد كان يعتكف في بيته أو في غرفة. And a person doesn't make i'tikaf in other than the masjid. Like they don't just, for example, they got a house, they make a room in their house. They say they're making an i'tikaf in this room, right? I'tikaf is done in the masjid, He said, if they do that, if a person says, I'm making an i'tikaf for 10 days, right? They make a musalla in their room, in their house. They make a whole room with books, a nice carpet, everything that you would need as if it was a masjid. It's in their house though. If they did that, then they do what? They leave off. They say, I'm going to be here for 10 days. I'm doing i'tikaf in this room for 10 days. So what do they leave off? The jama'ah, 5 daily prayers in congregation, and Jumu'ah.
Oh, 10 days, yeah.
All right, 10 days. They're going to leave off Jumu'ah too, because they're making i'tikaf in their house. So that's the importance of i'tikaf being made in a masjid, where they pray the 5 daily prayers. And this is why it said, وَلَا يَصِحُ مِمَّنْ تَلْزَمُهُ الْجَمَاعَةِ إِلَّا فِي مَسْجِدٍ تُقَامُ فِيهِ إِنْ أَتَى عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةِ. That's why I said the i'tikaf is not correct if they don't accept that if they do it. It's not correct except that it's done in a place where the 5 daily prayers are prayed. If it's time for the salah. Because a person, al-i'tikaf, it's not necessarily, as some of the ulama explain, يعني لزوم المسجد ولو ساعة, even if it's for 1 hour, it can be called i'tikaf. So a person may say, I'm making i'tikaf, right, for 1 hour or for 2 hours. And during those 2 hours, no obligatory prayer comes. So if they're going to be, you with me? If there's going to be a time frame where the 5 obligatory prayers are going to come by, then they have to be in the masjid. They have to make their intention to be in the masjid where the 5 daily prayers are established. So for example, if a person comes after Salat al-Isha, and they say, I'm going to make i'tikaf, right, in a masjid and they say, for example, from Isha, from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. From 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. 4 hours i'tikaf, right? They can do that in a masjid where they don't pray the 5 daily prayers. Why? Because the time is not going to come where they have to get up and leave, or they're going to miss the salat or anything. They're not going to miss an obligatory prayer on that type of time schedule if they were to do something like that. But if it's going to cause them, the salawat are going to come around and you're going to be missing the prayers and they have to make it, it's not correct, except that it's made in the masjid where they pray the 5 daily prayers. He says, he just gives a reason why. If a person was to make their i'tikaf in a place where they don't establish the 5 prayers, it leads to more than one thing. Number one, he says, either number one, he's going to have to keep leaving and going to another masjid where they pray the 5 daily prayer, which is keep going in and out, in and out, in and out. That's basically negating the point of the i'tikaf, right? Or number two, if he's just going to stay there, if he says, I'm not going to keep leaving in and out because that's going to negate the point of the i'tikaf. He says, I'm going to just stay there, right? If that's the case, yatruk salat al-jama'ah. If that's the case, then he's going to leave off praying salat al-jama'ah because they don't pray the jama'ah. They don't pray the congregation prayer in that masjid. So he's going to say either one, I'm going to just leave out every time and go pray somewhere else, which is defeating the point.
You can't leave, right?
Or two, right, you can't leave. Or two, he say, you know what, I'll just stay here. But if he stays there, then he leaves off the jama'ah in totality, which is not permissible. Intentionally leaving off the jama'ah. He says, this is the case, except that the person cannot leave. The person cannot leave. I'm sorry. He says, وَشُرِطَ لَهُ طَهَارَةٌ مِمَّا يُوجِبُ غُسْلًا. From the conditions of i'tikaf is that a person is in tahara. They're in a state of, they're in a purified state if they need to make a ghusl. Meaning, if a person has to make a ghusl, right? For example, a woman, her menses went off, so she has to make a ghusl. So before she makes her i'tikaf, she makes a ghusl first before she comes to the masjid. Or a person that were intimate with their wife, the man was intimate with his wife, and he has to make a ghusl. He doesn't come to the masjid and he's junub. He has to make a ghusl. He makes a ghusl first, and then he comes for i'tikaf. When her menses stops, she makes a ghusl from the menses, and then she comes to make i'tikaf. That's why I said the condition is that a person is purified from the things that would necessitate a ghusl. Whatever would necessitate a ghusl, that a person makes a ghusl first, purifies himself, and then they come for i'tikaf. لأن المسجد لا يجلس فيه حائض ولا جنب. Because the one on the masjid shouldn't be sitting in the masjid, nor the one who needs to make a ghusl from intercourse. They should not be sitting in the masjid. قال وإن نظره أو الصلاة طيب وإن نظره أو الصلاة في مسجد غير الثلاثة فله فعله في غيره وفي أحدها فله فعله فيه وفي الأفضل والأفضل مسجد الحرام ثم مسجد النبي في الأقصى صلى الله عليه وسلم مسجد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في الأقصى. طيب, if a person, they make an oath for that they're going to make i'tikaf, right? Just like if a person made an oath, so they say, for example, if Allah cures such and such, and I'm going to fast this amount of days, right? I'm going to fast 10 days straight. If Allah gives me this job, I'm going to fast 10 days straight, right? Those 10 days initially were not obligatory. But once a person made that oath, now they become obligatory. Now you got 10 obligatory days. Same thing with i'tikaf. A person says the same thing. If Allah bless me with this job, then another, I'm going to fast. How they make an oath? They make an oath to make, I'm going to make i'tikaf for a week, 7 days. They make another, right? They make an oath that they're going to make i'tikaf for 7 days. He says, if they do this, لَزِمَهُ الْوَفَى بِهِ If they make that oath, then they have to make the i'tikaf. It's obligatory now. The Messenger ﷺ said, "من نذر أن يطيع الله فليطيعه ومن نذر أن يعصيه فلا يعصيه." That the Messenger ﷺ said, whoever makes an oath to obey Allah, to do some type of worship or obedience, then they have to do it. They have to carry it out. And whoever makes an oath to disobey Allah, then they don't do it. A person may make an oath to disobey Allah that is not to be carried out. And Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he asked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam about, he said, أنه نذر أن يعتكف ليلة في المسجد الحرام وقال له صلى الله عليه وسلم أوفي بنذرك. He told the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he made an oath that he will make i'tikaf at the Haram, the Kaaba. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, carry out your oath, carry it out. So once a person makes that oath that they're going to make i'tikaf based on whatever it is. If Allah bless me with a good sister, if he bless that, me marry that sister, I'm making i'tikaf 10 days. He marries the sister who he's talking about, that those 10 days become obligatory. Or she says that about a man she wants to marry, those 10 days become obligatory. Those 10 days become obligatory. He says, O salat fi masjidin ghayra thalatha. A person makes an oath, they say, and they specify, إذا نظر اعتكاف في مسجد معين فإنه لا يتعين المسجد بل يعتكف في أي مسجد تقام فيه الجماعة. A person makes another, and this is important. They make an oath that they're going to pray, that they're going to make i'tikaf in a specific masjid, right? Because some people are going to say, you can't make i'tikaf there, huh? You can't be going down there making i'tikaf. You got to make i'tikaf here, right? We already know. You can't make i'tikaf down there with them. You got to make i'tikaf up there with the people, at this masjid with the people. He says, in summary, all of the messages are the same. They're all on the same level. You can make an i'tikaf in any masjid, as long as they pray the Jama'ah. There's no masjid that got a virtue over the other one. When it comes to i'tikaf, they pray the 5 prayers, you can make an i'tikaf there. Everything after that is preference. You prefer to be somewhere else, alhamdulillah, that's okay. But you can't say a person can't make i'tikaf in a masjid where the 5 prayers are being established. So if a person, he says, if they specify a specific masjid, فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَتَعِيَّنَ الْمَسْجِدِ بَلْ يَعْتَكِفْ فِي أَيِّ مَسْجِدٍ. Why? لِأَنَّهُ لَا مِيزَةَ لِبَعْضِ الْمَسَاجِدِ عَلَى بَعْضِ. There's no virtue, there's no distinguish from one masjid to the next. Right? All the masajid, they're on the same level. Right? Except for 3. Meaning, if you pray in a Jama'ah, in any masjid, the reward is the same for the Jama'ah. Right? Either 25 according to the hadith, or 27. Except for 3 masjids. Because these 3 masjids, the reward for praying in that masjid is not the reward as the rest of the masajid, according to the text, according to the authentic hadith. You with me? Meaning, all the masajid in the city, or not just city, in general, all the masajid that pray to 5, the reward is the same as far as the reward for the Jama'ah. So what if a person, they make an oath, إِلَّا إِذَا نَذَرَ أَنْ يَعْتَكِفَ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. They make an oath to pray or to make i'tikaf at the Kaaba, right? Oh, في المسجد النبوي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Or they make an oath, which it becomes obligatory that they're going to make an i'tikaf at the Prophet's Masjid in Medina sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or at Masjid Al-Akhsar, right? حينئذ لا يجوز له الاعتكاف في غيرها من المساجد. If they make their oath, and let's start from the top down. If they make the oath, if Allah does this, gives me this, then I make an oath, I'm going to make i'tikaf at the Kaaba for 10 days. If they say like that, they can't go to any other masjid and fulfill that i'tikaf except for the Kaaba. Why? Because the Kaaba, the reward for the Kaaba is 100,000 for every salah. And you can't get that anywhere else. So now you can't go anywhere else except for that exact place. Tayyib. The second level, they say, I'm going to make the i'tikaf at the Prophet's Masjid in Medina. If they say they're going to make it there, then they can go there specifically. They can't go to any other masjid except the Prophet's Masjid. Why? Because it's 1,000. The reward is 1,000 for every salah. So it got to be at least 1,000. Right? You got to pray in an area, in a place where you're going to get at least 1,000 rewards for the salah. But he can pray there, or he can pray at the Kaaba. Because the Kaaba is 1,000 and more. It's more than 1,000. The Kaaba is 100,000. So if he says Medina, then he has a choice between Medina and Mecca. If he says the third one, at the least, he says Masjid Al-Aqsa. And say, I'll make an oath if Allah gives me this, then I'm going to make i'tikaf at Masjid Al-Aqsa for 10 days. That means they can't go anywhere else except for Masjid Al-Aqsa, Philistine, right? Masjid Al-Aqsa. Why? Because the reward for praying there is 500 for every salah. So wherever he goes, he has to get at least 500, right? So he can go there, or he can go to Medina, or he can go to Mecca, but he can't go anything under Masjid Al-Aqsa. Anything under those three masajid in the world, they're all the same. They're all the same under those three, because the text, the hadith, point to the Masjid Al-Aqsa, the reward is 500 for each salah. The Masjid of Medina, the Prophet's Masjid, is 1,000 rewards for every salah. And the Kaaba is 100,000. So anything under those, the reward is the same, no matter where a person is in the world. Tayyib. That's why it says, وَأَفْضَلُهَا الْمَسْجِدُ الْحَرَامِ ثُمَّ الْمَسْجِدُ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم فَالْأَقْصَى. So the best of them is the Kaaba, and then the Prophet's Masjid, and then Al-Aqsa. طيب. He says, وَلَا يَخْرُجْ مَنْ اعتكف منذورا متتابعا إلا لما لا بد منه. So the person who does this, they make that oath, and they say, if Allah gives me this, then I'm going to make i'tikaf here, right? They don't leave. Then they don't leave, and they say, I'm going to fast, I'm going to make i'tikaf there for 10 days straight. Then they don't leave except for necessity, except for a necessity. Al-Mu'takif, la yakhruj. If he leaves, then it does what? It reduces and it takes away from his or her i'tikaf. Right? But if it's an oath that they don't leave except for what they have to leave for, right? They need food, they need to go to the bathroom, right? They might need to wash up, necessities, right? أما إن كان الاعتكاف منظورا فلا يجوز. I'm sorry. إن كان الاعتكاف غير منظور فإنه إذا خرج نقص اعتكاف. طيب, if it's a voluntary i'tikaf, it's not something that they made an oath for, and they leave out like that, it takes away from their i'tikaf. Alright? But if it's an oath that they made, if they say, if Allah gives me this, then I'm going to make i'tikaf here for 10 days straight, that's an oath. If they made another, then they made i'tikaf, and they can't leave except for necessity. Right? Like using the bathroom. He says, Allah al-hajjah, or wudu, they got to make wudu. Right? Or ihdar ta'am, إِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ عِنْدَهُ مَنْ يَحْضَرُ. Or to get something to eat, maybe to get food, if they don't have anybody to bring it to them. If they have somebody to bring it to them, then they should stay. Right? On top of that, وَلَا يَعُودُ مَرِيضًا. They don't even leave to visit people. Right? وَلَا يَعُودُ مَرِيضًا. Even though visiting the sick is recommended, and it's a form of worship, and it's something from khayr, it's good. So, but in this case, they don't even leave to visit the sick. Why? Because they're doing something, the form of worship at i'tikaf is greater. That form of worship is greater than the other form of worship. And if he was to do that, he says, that would take away from his i'tikaf or her i'tikaf. So staying in i'tikaf, أفضل من خروجه لهذه السنة. Even though it's a sunnah, it's the sunnah to visit the sick and to make the dua for the sick. He says that i'tikaf is better, it's stronger, it's a higher level. So they don't leave for those situations إلا بشرط. That a person at the beginning of their i'tikaf, they can put a condition, a stipulation. They can say, at the beginning of their i'tikaf, they can say, as he says, أريد أن أعتكف في مسجد 10 أيام على أنني أخرج لعيادة المريض وتشييع الجنائز. He says, I'm going to make i'tikaf for 10 days, right, in this masjid, right, except for the times where I'll go to visit somebody that's sick. They make that condition at the beginning of their i'tikaf. Or I leave out to carry a janazah. Those are the only things I'm putting a condition on. If somebody's sick while I'm here, that I can go visit that sick and it won't break my i'tikaf. Or if it's a janazah to carry the body for the janazah, then in that case, if I'm here making my i'tikaf, I'm going to do that without breaking the janazah, as he says, فَلَا بَأْسَ. Then there's no problem with that, as long as the condition is made fil bidayah, at the beginning. Not once they're in there for 3 days and then they want to change their mind, right? Somebody gets sick now, they want to change their mind, right? They should make that stipulation at the beginning. طيب, ما يشرع للمعتكف فعله. What should the person making i'tikaf do? What should they be busy with? وَالسُنَّةِ اشْتِغَالُهُ بِالْقُرَبِ وَاجْتِنَابُ مَا لَا يَعْنِيهِ. The first two things, the sunnah, is that a person is busy with worship, which means that they may have to leave the things that are a distraction, like the cell phone. If the cell phone is going to distract a person from being able to worship, then that's a fitna that a person has to deal with and make a decision on how they're going to deal with that. A person should be busy with al-qurab, اشتغاله بالقرب من تلاوة القرآن, من تلاوة للقرآن, reciting the Quran, والصلاة نوافل, voluntary prayers, making dhikr. And he says, ولا يضيع وقته في غير عبادة. He shouldn't waste, or they shouldn't waste their time in doing things other than different types of worship. Don't waste your time doing things other than worship. لأنه اعتكف للعبادة فيكثر من العبادة. Because the whole point of staying in the masjid, especially the last 10 days of Ramadan, for 10 days in the masjid, the whole point of being there is that a person is busy with worship, different types of worship. That's the whole point of being there. And not just to take yourself away in a bunch of hardships other stuff you could have been doing. The point is to increase in worship. وَقَوْلُهُ وَاجْتِنَابُ مَا لَا يَعْنِيهِ. And that not that they're just busy with worship, but that they stay away from the things that are of no benefit, the things that have that don't concern them, as the Prophet ﷺ said, "Min husn al-Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni." That the Prophet ﷺ said, from a person perfecting their Islam is that they do not busy themselves with things that don't concern them. And that's in general. So what about the person that's making i'tikaf? It's even more emphasized for the person making i'tikaf that they're not busy with things that are going to distract them and take them away from the worship. So he says, one, that a person should be busy with worship, and two, staying away from things that's going to busy a person from worship. And then he says, وَوَطْءُ الْفَرْجِ يُفْسِدُهُ وَكَذَا إِنْزَالٌ بِمُبَاشِرَةٍ وَيَلْزَمُ لِإِفْسَادِهِ كَفَّارَةُ يَمِينٍ. The things that break a person's i'tikaf. He says, وَطْءُ الْفَرْجِ يُفْسِدُهُ. لقوله تعالى ولا تباشروهن وأنتم عاكفون في المساجد فإذا جامع المعتكف بطل اعتكافه. That intercourse breaks a person's i'tikaf. It breaks a person's i'tikaf. As Allah said in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 187, that and don't go to the women, don't go to them, and you are making your i'tikaf in the masjid, right? That that breaks the i'tikaf. فَإِذَا جَامَعَ الْمُعْتَكِفُ. So if a person that's considered to be making i'tikaf has sex with their wife or the wife of the husband, then it breaks, it nullifies their i'tikaf. طيب. Also, وَكَذَا إِنزَالٌ بِمُبَاشَرَةٍ. Also, a person may not intercourse, but they may ejaculate from touching. Ejaculation from touching, the man or the woman. فَيْبَاشَرَ زَوْجَتُ فَأَنزَلَ مَنِيًّا فَإِنَّهُ يُبْطِلُ اعْتِكَافُهُ. لأنه بمعنى الجماع, because it comes, takes the same ruling as intercourse, that a person is intentionally touching their wife or the wife touching the husband until they ejaculate, then it breaks their i'tikaf. And if they do this, their i'tikaf is broken and they have to pay a penalty. Either another i'tikaf or fasada. If it was obligatory, this was an obligatory i'tikaf. He says, وَإِذَا نَظَرَ i'tikaf وَفَسَدَ يَلْزَمُهُ كَفَّارَ يَمِينٍ بَدَلًا عَنِ الْاعْتِكَافِ. أَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ غَيْرَ مَنْظُورٍ فَإِنَّهُ لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ. If it was just a voluntary i'tikaf and they broke it like that, then there's nothing on them. But if it was an obligatory i'tikaf and they broke it like that, either with intercourse or touching until they ejaculate, then they have the i'tikaf is broken and they have to pay a penalty, kafaratu yameen, for that situation if it wasn't obligatory, meaning an oath. Clear? Father?
Now, does that take the ruling of like a fast where it still has to be made up?
No, not they have to make it up, but well, the nether.
I mean, if it's an oath, then they still got that on their neck, right?
He says, "Yalzamu kafaratu yamin badalan an al-i'tikaf," in replacement of it. In replacement of it, not like the fast. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And with that is the end of the chapter, the book of Siyam. That's the end of the book of Siyam. And that was seven classes, inshallah, Allahumma. Balaghana Ramadan. Ask Allah allow us to reach Ramadan and benefit from it. And next week we'll start summarize rulings of fasting during Ramadan, inshallah. Inshallah ta'ala. We'll stop there. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Finish.
Yeah.